Nobody gets more angry than people who you catch stealing. If you've run companies before, I'm sure you've seen it. They feel indignant and entitled, like, how dare you attack me for having been stealing from you? And there's no one more righteous. And that's what's happening with government.
One of the things I describe in here is how you can really sort some of that stuff out, because people, they don't react according to the truth. They react according to the truth as they believe it or perceive it to be.
People expect their government to be just. They expect rule of law to be obeyed. That's why we have laws. We can hold people accountable when they do something that's wrong. All the Democrats who are out there who say, oh, Trump only taxes, he's only trying to tax the people who live in this country, and he doesn't care about taxing corporations, taxing. That was one of the biggest taxes on corporations America's ever seen. They went from 9%, at least tripled the tax rate that they were paying on the biggest corporations in America to bring them back, to force them back to the United States. We've done so well with making the country more of an equal opportunity. How can people who are watching today protect themselves from... Thank you for tuning in. I'm Dr. Ori Nagy, and this is the Dr. Nagy Show. And today on our podcast, we have...
John Haremza.
Thanks so much for coming in, John. I appreciate it.
Yeah, super. I'm excited to be here.
Tell me a little about what it is you do. And
well, I've been in the direct sales space, network marketing, MLM space for actually 35 years.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've had a really, really great career, actually.
Mm-hmm. MLM is something interesting because you learn to motivate a large crowd of people and get them excited on a daily basis to come out there and to continue to be motivated about selling to people and spreading the message that you're trying to deliver out to as many people as possible. And you show them how they can enrich themselves and make their lives better in that way.
Yeah, no, 100%. I am a poster child of it. It's kind of interesting because, I grew up in a small town in Minnesota, right? And I have dyslexia. Okay. And so when I went to school, it wasn't really understood. I was put in all these special classes and having tests read to me and, trying to, have you read out loud in class and kids teasing you. And so I came out of high school, with no self-esteem and no self-confidence, right? I was very, very shy and introverted. And so when I first got approached, to look at my first company as a water filter, and I thought they wanted me to build a display, right? Or look at the quality of product. I mean, the idea of sales or talking to somebody didn't ever enter my mind, right? It just really fit in well. I think part of it is to be successful in the industry I'm in is you really have to believe, right? You have to believe in what it is you're doing and what you're representing, which obviously it's the same, with what you're doing. I mean, you got to be passionate, you got to believe in the cause and what it is you're doing. And so that's what I think brings on success. Everything else you can kind of figure out.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I got an opportunity to work with salespeople back in 2010.
Okay.
In 2010 here in Las Vegas, we created the most successful solar panel installer for residential homes in Las Vegas. We called ourselves American Patriot Solar Community.
Nice.
And we'd packaged together 13 homes at 5 kilowatts apiece, and then that was enough to buy panels for a container. So then we could get shipping containers worth of panels at very reduced rates, and we were able to bring it in for a third of the cost of the competitors.
Right.
And it was super affordable for people. There was actually a monopoly that we had to break. There was somebody who had rigged the government subsidies so that they got all of them in the state. And we had to work with some politicians and attorneys and get that reduced. But that's what really opened up the solar market here in Las Vegas, and you really saw it boom because we dropped the prices for $70,000 for a 5 kilowatt system down to 25.
Oh, nice.
And it was at that point that the panels were less than the cost of electricity, and it just took off like wildfire after that.
Yeah, well, I got solar in my home as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it was kind of because I'd gotten pitched quite a bit, right? And my argument always was, by the time I pay for this thing, it's going to be outdated anyway, and all I'm doing is just changing, paying the solar instead of paying my power bill. But when somebody finally explained to me, but your power bill is going to continue to go up, right? And the solar is going to be stable and eventually get paid off. And exactly. So, I mean, I'm at least, my power bill probably right now would be like close to $1,000, and I'm locked in at like $418 on my solar payment. Mm-hmm. And I'm super happy with it.
Yeah, saving $600 a month is a big deal.
Yeah, and that's only going to get more because power is not going to go down; it's going to go up, right?
Well, yeah, Berkshire Hathaway owns a power company out here, so they are in the business to make money, and so they are going to keep raising prices, unfortunately here.
Yeah.
But that's how I got into it, right? I got back into town in 2004. As I grew up here when I was a little kid, and came back in 2004 and drove around the city. It's like, we have the most days of sunshine in the country. How come there are not solar panels on every house? And I thought somebody's going to have to do something about that. And '05 came and went, and '06 came and went, and '07 and '08. And by '09, I'm like, what the heck's going on? Where are all the contractor guys I know who I grew up with why aren't they putting the panels on the homes? I
Right.
said, I got a degree in economics from Yale. I can figure this out. So I sort of penciled out on the back of a napkin on how to make the solar panels affordable. So it was less than the cost of electricity, and you could kind of attach it to the home loan. So you got 20 years to pay it off, and the monthly rates were then less than the cost of the electricity bill. And the next year we went out, and so that next year we got 0 rebates. You had to get a rebate to make it affordable at that time because the panels were so expensive, and all the rebates went to this other company. So then we had to, right? So which is my first experience with a rigged government enterprise, kind of other than being in healthcare, right, where the government sets the prices for everything. But to see how the levers of the government have been corrupted to benefit one company over competitors, and as soon as you broke that government monopoly, suddenly competitive prices entered, and then our city was flooded with other people who were becoming solar salespeople, and it was a real transition for our city, and a good thing, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And now with the big, solar fields and all that kind of things, I think it's a growing market for sure. Are the subsidies still there, or are they ending? Because I know I got a rebate,
My understanding is that I think Trump was talking about ending the subsidies, and right now the concern is that the manufacturing for the solar panels requires components that China may have an advantage over us for, and because their market has been so heavily subsidized by the government, they've been able to produce the solar panels at a price that American companies find difficult to compete with. And because America can cheaply produce energy from geothermal and oil and gas, and we have an abundance of those things. I think the desire for this administration is to use what we have, and that seems to make a lot of sense. So we're doing that, and we're pushing towards nuclear in order to provide enough power for the data centers. The idea being that if the data centers can provide their own self-contained 24/7 electricity generation, then they're not going to put pressure on the power grid and drive prices up for everybody else. So, and it gives us an opportunity to utilize America's superior technology in nuclear energy to uh, create lower power prices for everybody here in the country and reduce the cost of living for everyone. If electricity prices drop, it's like reducing taxes on everybody in the country.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate
Yeah,
Donald
that's a
Trump
great
for
approach.
Donald Trump's leading us in the right direction on that.
Approach. I mean, what Trump does as well, just like you mentioned earlier, the corruption. It's disgusting, and I think that's why he got so much resistance. Is just the exposing all the corruption.
Nobody gets more angry and loud than people who you catch stealing. And if you've run companies before, I'm sure you've seen it. But they feel indignant and entitled, like, how dare you attack me for having been stealing from you? And there's no one more righteous. And so and that's what's happening with government, right? All of the people who are currently living on handouts from the government, and when I say have, I mean the government employees who have been part of these entitlement programs in which they're paying themselves bribes and paying the bribes back up all the way to Washington to the regulators who are sitting in those positions. They're all super angry that somebody's going to start investigating where all the money's going, because it means that their revenue is going to go away. And of course, they're gonna go after Donald Trump and say he's a terrible man for investigating the way that they're stealing from the government. So they get all this federal cheese, and then they use that money that they're taking out to donate to Democrats who are helping them to run these operations. It's really a nasty system. I got to see it up close.
Do you think it's possible to fix that? I mean, it's really disgusting. I mean, the way each side spins, the story to the narrative, right? Instead of, I mean, it's hard to know what to believe, and a lot of people don't, really look at it from a common sense standpoint. I mean, you look at these, Pelosi, what is she worth? Hundreds of millions of dollars. How is that possible? Right?
You're right about that. Or you look at Gavin Newsom, who was running what 700 some million dollars through or 700 $900 million through the charities over there. Sort of certainly lost to the system and ended up in a lot of the charities that they were operating. Or the Solyndra plant that was back under Obama. That was another $700 million boondoggle. They were creating solar systems that were the technology was worthless essentially. And another boondoggle, or the $400 million that's been stolen by the governor of Minnesota, back where you were from,
Right.
and funneled through the refugee camps essentially that they built over there, and all of the Medicaid fraud that these immigrants are now perpetuating on our government. It's a real disaster, and it's an epidemic across our country. And you see that the blue states seem to be the places where most of this fraud is happening. And it's a real burden on our country. People who work hard to pay taxes don't expect that the money is going to be used to subsidize fraud and corruption.
And then when you expose it, they don't believe it.
Yeah, they're totally indignant. Like, how dare you point out the fact that these people are stealing and have been lying to all of us?
It's just insane. Yeah. Frustrating.
It is. It's incredibly frustrating. You know, people expect their government to be just. They expect rule of law to be obeyed. That's why we have laws, right? So we can hold people accountable when they do something that's wrong. So with the border, right, when people are entering the country illegally, the reason we have laws, the reason we have a border is so that we can enforce the borders in our state and the laws there. And when people have a financial agenda to bring more people into the country illegally so that they can put them through these social welfare programs that they are stealing from, well, they're putting all of us at risk and in danger. Yeah,
Exactly.
and they're putting all of us in danger so that they can make money, and it's disgusting, and it has to stop. And thank God Trump has been leading the effort to shut that stuff down.
Even you know, the people, his resistance. I mean, this guy is a bit. There's no reason for him to do this. I mean, he's probably the only person that could, right? Because everybody else would. Why would I ever want to put myself through this crap? Right? And all this ridicule, put my family at risk and everything else. If it only makes sense that he's doing it for a bigger cause. He's doing it because he really does want to make America great again, and he's sick and tired of it.
They have tried so hard to stop this man. They tried to ruin him financially. They tried to imprison him. They tried to bury him in lawsuits. They tried to discredit him with sex scandals, and they tried to murder him at least twice.
Yeah.
It's and he's still standing. And that kind of courage is what do you put yourself through all that for? You put yourself and your whole family through that? I really believe that at the heart of things, he's trying to make America a better place. You know, one of the things that he did that gives me so much respect for that man is when he first came into office, one of the first things he did was he forced corporations that were, you know, huge U.S. corporations to bring their headquarters back into the United States from Ireland. So during the Bush administration, George Bush had allowed the companies to set up their headquarters in a lower tax domain in Ireland, where it was a 9% tax rate. But so can you imagine that the biggest corporations in America that have benefited from the United States subsidies of education for the engineers who work there, subsidies for the research that went into the technology that they utilize, that has supported the naval defense systems that protect the trade routes that allow them to ship in the materials for manufacturing and allow them to ship the materials back into the U.S. where they're going to sell them here. All of the profits from all of that, they suddenly took out of America and shipped offshore as though the corporation has no obligation to the United States, as this American company is no longer American. And that was the agenda of all of these globalists that Trump started to turn around. And what purpose, what reason would he have for doing that if not to benefit the people of the United States of America, to return that tax base back? And, you know, all of the Democrats who are out there who say, oh, Trump only taxes, you know, he's only trying to tax the people who live in this country, and he doesn't care about taxing corporations, taxing. That was one of the biggest taxes on corporations our America has ever seen. They went from 9% back to what is 35% corporate tax. What is the corporate tax rate right now? Anybody? We'll look it up. But it at least tripled the tax rate that they were paying on the biggest corporations in America to bring them back, to force them back to the United States. He forced the headquarters back here so they were taxable. And now he's using the tariffs primarily as a weapon. Yeah, it's to balance things out around the country, but it's also a weapon against these gigantic corporations that no longer want to manufacture in the U.S. He's forcing them to bring their manufacturing back into our country. Right. And that's going to be a tremendous benefit to the people of the United States of America. The president that he most closely emulates is McKinley. A couple presidents after Lincoln. And he instituted these same kind of protective tariffs, and it was a tremendous boon to the economy. It's the parallels between the presidencies and the pathway they took on economics is quite remarkable. And if things work out the same way they did then, there's a lot of promise for the future here for the next couple of years.
Yeah. You know, honestly, when you're looking at the other side, I just even question, do they actually believe the BS that they're talking about? Because, you know, from the Republican, the conservative side, it just seems to make all such common sense, where the other side makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, everything is cause and effect, right?
I think the way that they bind people together is they paint Republicans as an evil group of racists, racist fascists. And then they find people who are feeling marginalized or victimized, and they try to pit them and their fears against the rest of the people in the community. And they're very, very good at trying to drive that wedge in. And they ran out of
Well,
marginalized
they get the
people.
media on their side too,
They
which is another thing hard to understand.
We've done so well with making the country more of an equal opportunity, a place where people, they all have an opportunity, an American dream now, because the school system's been democratized. So regardless of your race, regardless of your gender, regardless of your orientation, people now have an equal opportunity to succeed in our country. And now that that's the case, they've kind of run out of minorities to support. So they've gone to this transgender thing that's a tiny fraction of the American population that they're using to drive in as a wedge to divide Americans against each other. And it's a terrible and evil thing that they're doing, because now is a time in our country where we need to be together, particularly in the setting wherein the corporations really are lining up against the people of the country. And it's the big ag, big insurance, and big pharma are really taking too much out of the system and not leaving enough for the rest of Americans, because they've been able to lobby year after year after year after year to rig laws in their favor and capture too much of our government. Donald Trump is undoing that, and that's why there are so many people trying to fight against him.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a huge, big job, and the man has a tremendous amount of courage.
Yeah, like I said, I'm a huge supporter and just admire him for what he's, putting himself through, because he wouldn't need to do it.
Just so.
Yeah.
Well, so you wrote this book, and
I did.
I mean, that's something else that you
Yeah.
need to go and do. But what inspired you to write this book?
I think people, it's called the power of influence, right? And
Okay.
every single day we are being influenced or we are influencing, right? So the power of influence, and so many times that influence is bad influence or misinformed influence, right? And so, I mean, if you're being influenced by, even when you're looking in the political world, right? I mean, there's this massive population. Even look at the extreme, with Cortese and so, I mean, they're extremists, but they're influencing people. This isn't a political book, but the influence that they have on people, right? So it's not good influence. I mean, they're leading them down a bad path. But we're being influenced every day, and we're influencing people every day, right? And so it's how to build your, and it's called the new language influence. And the concept, it's taking authentic influence, because you can get influence, because you have money. You can get influence from having a title, right? But it may not be, you may not be representing that influence properly. I'm talking about in this book how you can build authentic, real influence, right? By really building that trust, and so it's really written in an authentic way to build real influence versus manipulation or through power.
How can people who are watching today protect themselves from bad influence and or sort out all of the different people who are
Well,
trying to
I
get?
think you got to get educated. They have to pay attention and really, and I think that's one of the things I describe in here is how you can really sort some of that stuff out, because people, they don't react according to the truth, right? As it really is. They react according to the truth as they believe it or perceive it to be. I mean, people can have, and especially in the political world, right? They have conflicting beliefs. So how do you sort it out? Because your beliefs are formed from your influences.
Yeah.
And it's formed from your parents. It's formed from your work environment. It's formed from all the people that you hang around with. And if you're, I love this quote. It says, you can't change the people around you, so change the people around you. Right? and that's the problem. We're being influenced in many cases that they don't know any better. In their mind, it is the truth, but it's not the truth. It's it's a manipulation of what someone else is wanting them to believe.
So how does somebody start if they make the decision that they want to improve their life and try to get a better view on on the truth and finding people who can lead them that direction?
Well, one of the things is look at your situation. If you're not in a good situation, then you need to evaluate your situation.
Okay.
Right? I mean, it's long enough to practice the long philosophy. I mean, you're not doing well in your health. You're not doing well in your finances or whatever. Well, then you need to think about making some different decisions, getting around some different people, maybe listening to some different people.
Here in Las Vegas, you see a lot of people who get isolated, right? They don't have a lot of family around. They moved here from somewhere else, and if they stumble, or particularly if they have a health issue, which is when I see them, it can get really hard for them. And they fall into a bad place because, you know, they're in pain and they're struggling to meet their bills and they're struggling to work. And it's a, and one of the things that I find is really helpful for these people is I tell them to, you know, go find a local, a faith-based organization, a church of any type or temple or mosque or whatever, but go find some place and just show up. And even if you don't believe any of the things they're saying, there are always going to be a couple of blue-haired ladies over there who want to interfere in your life and bake you some pie and try to help you get you back out on your feet because it makes people feel good to help other people. And maybe having those good people around you in your life who are invested in you and trying to help you to succeed is what you need to sort of get through this tough patch and get you back on a path that wins. And you know, that's one of the things that's good about religion that people hardly ever talk about anymore. But I think the religion and sort of faith-based activities provide a lot of good in this country.
Yeah, one little simple, act of kindness can make a major difference in someone's life. I tell a story in here about this girl that was being bullied in school, and she's walking home from school, and this group of kids knocked the books out of her hands, and this other more popular girl actually went and helped her pick her books up, and then walked home with her. And then later in the story, she's the valedictorian of the class, and she told that story what happened, and she said no one knew it at the time, but I was going home to commit suicide that day, and that girl changed the course of my life just by helping me.
Wow.
Because I think that's the other thing. I think many times, Stephen Covey, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about seek first to understand, then to be understood. You never know what's going on in someone's life.
Yeah.
Right. And we have a tendency to just have a snap judgment instead of, try to understand what's going on in someone's life. And then you can, provide value to them.
It's one of those things that you go through growing up, right? At some point, you get to a level where you're no longer trapped in your own feelings and you can look around and say, oh, you know what? The things that I'm saying here are not just trying to get a point across, but they're going to have an impact on this other person. And I can make a choice about how this relationship with this other person is going to proceed, whether it's going to be successful or going to be a failure based on what I do right now. And that can be really transformative for people to when they get to that moment of recognition, because then their life becomes more about like, how do I enrich these people around me and make their lives better, as opposed to how do I, like just try to succeed in this thing that's immediately in front of me trying to do.
Yeah. For me, one of the things that really had an influence on my life is I got involved in personal development. Right. And my favorite person is a guy by the name of Jim Rohn. He's passed on, but his philosophy of life is just incredible. He says, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Right. Work on yourself, you make a fortune. Work on your job, you make a living. But one of the other things he said is what happens to us all. It's all in what you do about what happens that makes the difference. Two people, identical circumstances, they react differently, they have completely different outcomes. And too many people fall into this, something happens that shouldn't happen. Something happens that isn't fair. The problem is it happened. It's not what happened, it's what you do about what happened that's going to determine the outcome. Instead of people react and they fall into this, and this is, I think, throughout our society, something that isn't fair, that shouldn't have happened, happens, and they dwell on it and they drive themselves in a ditch instead of, hey, it happened. Now, what am I going to do to make the best out of this situation that shouldn't have happened? Right? Instead of falling into this internalizing something that shouldn't have happened, and they just drive themselves into a ditch. I mean, just being aware. For me personally, I mean, my dad was a janitor at a high school. My mom worked in a dog food factory. I mean, I had a good upbringing from a standpoint of work ethic and a moral compass, but I didn't have guidance in the area of finances or philosophy of life or success. And getting involved in personal development will literally, I think, change everyone's life. Listening to the right people.
So I am told you're an expert on cryptocurrency.
Well, I don't know about an expert. It's something I've been involved in for a while, but just buying and holding because I believe very strongly in the crypto environment, and the role it's going to play in our future. And I think to that point, again, I mean, I personally believe it's going to play a bigger and bigger role in our life. And, to stick your head in the sand and say, I don't understand it, or I don't want to understand it, or I don't want to know about it. I mean, you're going to improve your life if you take some time to understand it. and the impact that it's going to have in our life in the future, right? And so that's when I came to a realization, and I need to start to understand this. So I mean, I believe very strongly in the future of crypto and the impact that's going to have on our future.
What's the best thing that people can do right now to learn more about crypto, and what can the government do to enable crypto to benefit the rest of us here? Because if I win and I go to Congress and go to Washington, I will be able to influence some of these laws. But this is an area that I'm not an expert in, and I need advice from the people of our community who know about it.
Yeah, well, and again, I'm far from an expert, but I am listening to experts. I'm trying to learn and understand more in the impact and how it can move money around the world so quickly and so it's just, I mean, listening to Michael Saylor, he's the guy behind MicroStrategy and people like that. Just I'm trying to learn, so I'm by no means an expert, but I do believe in the future of crypto and the impact it's going to have, and I think everyone would do themselves justice by taking some time to understand it.
As I understand it, they're trying to develop stable coins right now and use those as a way to provide a secondary means of savings for banks. Banks currently use U.S. Treasuries for a lot of that.
Yeah.
But if they can start to use stable coins for that purpose, it allows us a way to stabilize global debt and the U.S. debt to other countries as well. That's sort of the strategy that I understand the early versions of. And if that bears out, that could help tremendously with the U.S. Debt,
Yeah.
and to give us a lot of relief, and enough relief that we can reduce our debt payment burden annually, and that will release a lot of cash to do all the things that we need to in the economy, like to secure Social Security indefinitely, to fill in the gaps in the in Medicare payments, and as we transition off of Obamacare into whatever replaces it, hopefully it's mutual insurance companies, that this helps the people who find themselves in need right now of those tax credits.
Mm-hmm.
But finding if we could save $1 trillion worth of payments on the debt a year, well, that'd be fantastic for America, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Trump definitely understands the the impact that crypto can have on the debt and on the way our world works.
I think he's been working hard with the Treasury Secretary to take power out of the hands of the bankers and return it to the president, who can then use that power to benefit the people of the United States, as opposed to benefiting a small group of bankers and the investors who surround them.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what do you normally talk about on your show? How often do you do it? Is it a weekly?
I was doing it, pretty regularly, and then actually, the person that was doing it for me really struggled getting the content put together. And now I've got, Jackson, who working with me to help get that all cleaned up and kind of back on track. But the concept of the show is the power of influence, and just, finding out, even like yourself, there's people that have had a really, positive influence on your life, right? And so helping people understand that and identify those influences that have really helped them, and just from that standpoint, how they can influence other people. Yeah, so the power of influence and the book. So I brought you a copy of
Oh,
it.
thanks so much. All right. What's the biggest takeaway that somebody who reads this book you wanted to leave having learned from this book?
Yeah, just that every single day you are being influenced, and if it's not good influence, it's not going to lead to a good outcome.
So pick the people around you carefully.
Pick the people around you carefully, 100%.
All right. Well, thanks so much, John. I appreciate you taking time to come on.
Thank you.
This podcast is a campaign communication paid for by Nagy for Congress and authorized by me, Dr. Nagy. The views and opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the campaign or its affiliates. Discussions are intended for informational and conversational purposes only and do not constitute legal, financial, or professional advice. Any references to public policy matters reflect general positions and priorities at the time of the recording and are subject to change based on legislative process and voter input.